Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to StarCraft 2 Strategy. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Protoss strategy. Now in this replay, our Protoss player is NEX Genius and our Terran opponent is Loner. So again, Protoss strategy, what are we looking at today? Going to be taking a look at a 2-gate Robo build in dealing with some early aggression from a Terran player. So we're going to start off and looking how to properly deal with an early push from a Terran opponent. A lot of times what you'll see is one of two things. You'll either see a really early Marine push, or slightly later but still relatively early Marine and Marauder push. In this instance, we're actually going to see a couple Marines, Marauder, and a Hellion push. Very early in the game, essentially what the Terran players attempt to do in a push like this is to hit you before you get your Warp Gate tech in. And if they can manage to get in your base, they can actually do a ton of damage, because a lot of times when working up to a Warp Gate tech as a Protoss player, you neglect those very early units as a result, because vesting resources into that Cybernetics Core and that Warp Gate research instead of, if you were to just get gateways and to pump out units that way, you're going to be slightly behind in an army, as opposed to a Terran player who's going straight just for a couple of barracks and then getting some units out of those. So clearly, as you work up to your Warp Gate tech, you can be a little vulnerable. Now, a way to counteract that is going to be to get some sentries and use those force fields. That's essentially what's going to save you until that Warp Gate research gets in. But just taking a look here, doing some scouting, seeing the very standard opening, barracks, refinery, nothing fancy going on here, pretty standard thus far. Probably going to be seeing an orbital command as well. Stay in his base up until that first Marine comes out, really no reason to leave. Back in our base here, as far as that opening build order, what we saw was a 9 Pylon, a 12 Gateway, and a 14 Assimilator. So again, we're going to be starting off with a 2-gate Robo build that's going to allow us to get some Immortals on the board, and then also if we see a heavy Bio build, a Marine and Marauder build, that's going to allow us to get a Robotics Facility, a Robotics Bay. It's going to allow us to get a Robotics Bay and get some Colossus on the board. And that's essentially an option that we would like to have. So that's one of the reasons that a 2-gate Robo build is very strong. Eventually it's going to become a 3-gate Robo build, and then once we in fact expand, we're going to be even seeing a 4th gateway as well. Now this Cybernetics Core here, this did come down at 17 supply. Essentially you want to drop that as soon as that gateway is in. Also getting this second Assimilator here, that came down at 19 supply. Now as soon as the Cybernetics Core is in, first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and create a Stalker, and then also start that Warp Gate research right away. Now this early Stalker is going to help defend against any early Reaper harassment or any sort of a Marine push as well. An early game Stalker with a couple of probes will fend off any very early push that you're going to be seeing from your opponent. So you can see, in fact, we do have 2 Marines pushing out. So if you decided to come all the way to our base with that, we would be okay with just the Stalker. Now, immediately following that Stalker, you are going to want the Sentry. And again, that Sentry is absolutely vital in holding back that early aggression, because without force field on the ramp, they can push into your base and do a ton of damage. And because we're getting this early Stalker and this early Sentry, that is the reason that this Robotics Facility did not come down immediately after that Cybernetics Core was up, because we did need to use that Vespene gas to get out those 2 units. But now that we have enough here, we are putting down this Robotics Facility, and that did go down at 29 supply, and then also right after that at 29 supply, getting the 2nd gateway as well. So here we go, we have this early Sentry now. Using the probe over here at this Zelnaga tower, this is going to tell us if any early push is coming, particularly on this map. This gives us the best vision because we are in this very close position here. So we see this Hellion pushing out, going to lose that probe unfortunately, pulling back the Stalker here into our base, and this is pretty vital right here. Holding off this early push is going to be absolutely vital. If you can't hold this off, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. We're going to be coming out with additional Sentry because we're going to want to use that force field. This is going to be out of energy very shortly. We're going to have enough for one more, but not anytime soon, unfortunately. So we need to get the 2nd Sentry out. As you can see, we've got a couple Marines, a Marauder, and a Hellion there. So 2nd Sentry is up. We're going to be needing that for a force field. Unfortunately, missed that force field there, kind of put it in a bad position. So he is able to push up. But at this point, since we got rid of that Hellion there that pushed into the base, with this Stalker and 2 Sentries, we should be okay. And here you go. These 2 Warp Gates are finally up. So now that we have these Warp Gates up, we are safe from that very early push. Coming out with this Observer here, that's the first thing we're going to want from that Robotics Facility. Definitely need to try to get a good idea of what our opponent's doing. Running into his base with any units is going to be very difficult, especially since a lot of Terran players like to set up a bunker up here to hold back any early pushes from Protoss players. So at this point, moving on with the scout, we're actually also going to be getting up this Nexus here. We put down that Nexus at 42 supply. That's the reason we don't have 3 gateways right now, because we were saving up for that Nexus. Getting that early expansion, of course, going to be good for economy. Now, you will be a little vulnerable to any aggression from your opponent when you're coming down with this, so you're going to need to be prepared to come out with units based off of what he gets. Kind of holding back on warping in at this moment. I'm going to wait to see what he's going for, and as we can see here, we are seeing these 2 Marauders and a bunch of Marines here. In seeing that bio-heavy build, that brought about the decision to drop this Robotics Bay, and that did come down at the same time of this expansion at 42 supply. Now, for those early Marauders, we're going to want some Immortals, so coming out with that right now. And essentially just running off these 2 gateways for the time being is going to be okay. Since we do have this expansion just about up, we're going to be getting the resources necessary to support a 3rd gateway, so dropping that down as well, and then a 4th gateway is going to come shortly thereafter, but not going to put that down quite yet because we do want to use these early resources to pump out some units for some early defense. With this Observer, just kind of hang out outside of his base. It'll give you a good idea as to what they're doing. Now, we did see this Banshee coming, so in order to prepare for that, we do need to pull the Observer back temporarily, just in case he does have Cloak coming. There's really no way for us to know if he does, but in preparation for that possibility, we are bringing this Observer back to our base. And the Stalkers alone will be enough to hold back any early Banshees. So 3rd gateway just about to come in right now. Again, just going to be warping in units, coming out with this Colossus now that we do have this Robotics Bay down. Again, we saw a very Marine and Marauder heavy army, and here we go, just coming into vision right now. So with that, Colossi very, very strong. Your Colossus is going to do very well against especially more Marine heavy. Marauders, it's not quite as good against, but still pretty decent. So we saw some sort of a push coming, going to be warping in some more units, going to want another Colossus coming out of this Robotics facility as soon as possible. He is still waiting on that Vespian, finally getting it, and there you go. So as you can see here, there is a push coming from our opponent. Going to want this Guardian Shield up. This is going to help drastically cut back the amount of damage that you take from these Marines and Marauders. Again, with the Guardian Shield, what happens, it reduces all damage, range damage to friendly units by 2. That is really, really big, especially against unupgraded Marines and Marauders. That reduction by 2 damage is really huge. So yeah, I mean, basically what we're going to want to do at this point is use your Observer, scout your opponent, try to find out exactly what they're doing, and push out when you feel like you're really in a strong position. At this point, the numbers are pretty much even. I mean, at the very least, you would want to wait until you have a 2nd Colossus, and then maybe try to be aggressive at that point. Also, a good consideration is trying to get that range upgrade, the thermal lance upgrade. Hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. But at this point, essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on our economy. Now, we do have this expansion up, of course, so going to be trying to get that as saturated as possible. Work on your economy, macro up, get out units, coming out with another Immortal right now instead of Colossus. The reason behind doing this is we are seeing a lot of Marauders and Siege Tanks, and the Immortal does very well against both those units. So, you know, like in any scenario in this game, your decision as to what you should be doing for units and buildings and tech should be based really in a proper response to what your opponent's doing. If we saw a lot more Marines, then we'd probably consider getting another Colossus out. I mean, we're going to get another one regardless, but getting out a 2nd or 3rd Immortal isn't going to be a bad idea when you see a mix like this with a lot of Marauders as well as Siege Tanks. Again, because Immortals are so strong against those Marauders and Siege Tanks. Now, something else to note is that with your Stalkers, you are going to want to make sure you target fire down the Vikings and Banshees that your opponent has, because those units are going to be used to target fire your Colossus. So you do want to make sure that you get rid of those threats as quickly as possible. So when they come within range, you know, again, use your Stalkers to target fire them and take them down as quickly as possible. So as you can see here, that thermal lance upgrade is coming in. Obviously, that's going to drastically improve the effectiveness of our Colossus. Also coming down with Forge here, we're gonna be using that to get some upgrades. Also could be using some cannons as well in our mineral line. This will help curb back the possible threat of any Cloak Banshees running into our minerals. Our army, I mean, as far as movement speed is concerned, pretty slow. I mean, you could warp in some Stalkers into your mineral line, but dealing with a Cloak Banshee threat in your mineral line can be pretty dangerous. Having some cannons in the mineral line, having some photon cannons in the mineral line will allow you that detection ability to see them. Not necessarily using cannons to kill the Banshees, because obviously they can move outside of that range, but that extra detection range that comes from it's definitely going to be very helpful in taking out and just preventing any sort of harassment from Cloak Banshees. So again, at this point, just macroing up, looking to get upgrades, getting that level 1 upgrade from our forge here. That's going to of course increase the effectiveness of our ground gateway units. Now seeing a push here, something really important to note: if you can ever catch your opponent's siege tanks out of position like we saw here, definitely going to want to push on it. Also probably going to want a computer that doesn't completely freeze during battles when I'm trying to cast, but we'll deal with that in the future. So yeah, if you ever catch siege tanks out of position, you need to capitalize on that. Siege tanks are much less effective unsieged, and if you catch them trying to siege up, then you definitely are going to want to push against them. Now, as you can see, since we were able to take out those tanks very quickly, we are going to have no problem taking out the rest of his army. He obviously, with Stimpak, can do a pretty good job of cutting us around, so just don't overcommit, don't be too aggressive, wait for him to try to come to you, and then take advantage of that range upgrade on your Colossus to pick him off. Definitely a very effective tactic. Again, whenever he pushes out against you, you're just pushing back, you're using the range of the Colossus to try to pick at him. Make sure you don't push out too far with those Colossus, so you definitely don't want to lose them. You've got some additional units coming en route as well. Something else important to note: just because you're attacking, being aggressive on the offensive doesn't mean you should stop your macro. Definitely want to still make sure you've got upgrades and units coming. So as you can see here, we are pushing against our opponent, and again, my computer is failing. Definitely incredibly thrilled about this. Sorry guys. Again, target firing these Vikings is going to be very important. As soon as those Zealots get within range of those Marines and Marauders, absolutely devastating, not much they can do. And you saw there that Viking was free to fire for quite a bit, and because of that, we lost our Colossus very quickly. So again, try to make sure with your Stalkers that you do target fire these Vikings or Banshees that are going to be trying to take down your Colossus. Keeping those guys up definitely going to be very helpful, especially since they are so expensive. They cost so much in terms of resources, the minerals and Vespian. You definitely want to keep those guys alive. So pushing out against them, and here you go. As you can see, Bloner does have to call good game. Because NEX Genius did keep up his macro and kept up the production, having this additional Colossus come out, even though for the past 2 or 3 minutes he's been in battle, keeping up that macro is going to be what allows you to win the game, because if you can do that, he basically called good game as soon as he saw that additional Colossus come out. Probably could have dealt with just these Stalkers and Zealots, but with that Colossus as well, definitely not enough. He did not have enough to handle that. So let's just take a look at that build order real quick. Again, what we looked at, opened up with a 2-gate Robo. We looked at how to fend off that early pressure from your ramp using force fields, also getting a pretty early expansion, and then upon that expansion, getting additional gateways. We can afford a 4-gate Robo build with 2 bases. So let's look at that build order, starting off with that 9 Pylon, follow that up with a 12 gateway and 14 Assimilator. 17 supply, we saw that Cybernetics Core. 19 supply, that second Assimilator. Need lots of gas for this build. 23 supply, started that Warp Gate research. 29 supply, getting that Robotics Facility. Also 29 supply, getting that second gateway there. 42 supply, after holding back an early push, we did go ahead and expand, dropping that Nexus at our natural, also putting that Robotics Bay down because we did see a very Marine and Marauder heavy army from our opponent, so getting that Robotics Bay going to allow us to get those Colossus out and deal with that army. Sorry for that little computer crap out there. Gonna try to upgrade my computer very shortly. If you feel like donating and helping the cause, feel free. So once again, guys, this has been for StarCraft 2 Strategy. If you like our videos and you like what we're doing here, please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning. Something else to note when playing with Immortals or any unit that's specifically strong against certain type of units, you're going to want to target fire what it's good against. This Immortal does no good for you if he's targeting Zerglings. So when this Immortal comes into battle, you are going to want to make sure that you target fire any Roaches. Now you can see again how important these force fields are. These force fields are stopping this Baneling bust from running through.